It's questionable from where I stand whether the legislature and the executive care as much as the people care for the environment, especially the youth of our country who turn up in droves when the environment issues are being discussed or debated or being highlighted. And that is exactly what happened and what prompted some youth to put up a mural in the parks here in Colombo, and it was sort of taken down. But the environmental issues today are far more intense than that. We have various sort of conflicts. We have the human-elephant conflict and so on and so forth. We have the potential destruction of the only rainforest that we have here in Sri Lanka, the Singharaja rainforest. And to discuss these and a little bit more, we've got here a legal man who spent a lifetime supporting and representing environmental issues. He's right here with us, of course, Dr. Jagath Gunawardena. Very good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you.
And tell me, from your standpoint, having spent a lifetime in supporting legally environmental issues, is Sri Lanka doing okay? It's not doing okay? Is it in a perilous state? What's your observation?
My observation is that we are in a precarious state. Not perilous, but precarious. If we don't rectify the problems, we are going to in big trouble.
What do you mean? Can you define big trouble?
Big trouble is that we are depending on our ecosystems and the life support systems and the environmental supportive systems for many things. So we cannot exist in this country without the environmental services provided by the ecosystems of this country. And we are destroying and also sometimes degrading these very systems that maintain life on the country and the planet. So it's a global issue, but when it comes to Sri Lanka, we are no better.
But in Sri Lanka, when these destruction and so on happens, is it through ignorance because they don't understand it, or is it, well, I don't care because I want to pursue financial gain? Is that, what do you think it is?
It is a mixture of both of these things.
Ignorance?
Plus myopic greed, as I described it.
Myopic greed.
Yes.
I like that. That's a good description. What can we, the people, do?
We have to increase what we call the environmental literacy of this country. That is the knowledge of the environment. So if they know that we need this not for luxury, not for our enjoyment, but for our own survival, people will care more about the environment.
Will more programs like this help?
Yes, of course, the media has a big role to play in creating focused awareness, as I put it.
Currently, what would you say are the main issues going on?
The main issues that I see here in Sri Lanka, on one hand, is the destruction and the degradation of the habitats. The second issue is related to this. The species of animals and plants that inhabit this country, and especially the endemics, are going in the way of extinction, or they are prone to extinction. And the third issue that I feel is the environmental pollution that adds up to many problems in this country. So these are the three main issues, or the problem issues, that I can see. Not the causes, the issues.
The issues. Do you think that there, or do you detect in your observations, because obviously you don't know what's going on in their minds, but you can only observe like we do, but you can observe better because you understand the issues. In your observations, do you think that the government, authority, let's say authority, the authority doesn't understand, they failed miserably to understand? Or are we to really believe that they don't care?
I think once again it's a mixture of both. They don't understand the implications, they don't understand the depth and the breadth of the issue, as well as they don't care, because in this country as well as in other democratic countries, they are elected to serve a certain period of time. So their thinking most of the time is limited to their term in office. And then once they get elected, they only think about getting re-elected most of the time. So this long-term planning, long-term vision is something that is solely lacking in the state sector, the legislature and the executive. And that is one reason why in my whole adult life there had been many instances where I had opposed the successive governments, including the present government. So it's nothing new to oppose the government, because that's what we have to do when they don't understand and take a path of destruction against the environment.
They don't understand, or they don't want to understand?
Both, I think. Some people do understand, but they don't care, and they are the worst culprits rather than people who act through ignorance. The knowledgeable culprits are more dangerous, because they can always twist the facts and twist the figures and say something to justify their actions, whereas the really stupid people get exposed when they are questioned.
Between independence in 48 and now, I'm told that the extent of the Singaraja forest is now only 10% or nearly 10%, a little bit more than 10%. From around 100,000, it's now around 13,000. How is that happening? Is it because of development? Is it because of a growing population?
Singaraja is defined in different ways. So if you take, I think the person who may have given this figure may have figured the southwestern rainforest in the Sri Lankan southwestern region of the country, including Singaraja, Kanneliya, Haycock and those habitats. Then of course there was a lot of destruction for timber, for farmlands, for agricultural purposes, and the destruction was very rapid during the early part of 1970s, where there were clear felling and selective felling of logs in many wet zone forests to feed the timber trade. But in 1977, a cabinet decision was taken not to fell trees in natural forest in the southwestern region, and thereafter some of these forests were made into forest reserves. But that may be one period which really degraded the forests in the southwestern region, including Singaraja, which was also selectively logged during this period. And that's how the people's minds went to the plight of Singaraja when the then environmental movement led by Mr. Thilo Hoffmann fought back to preserve it. So that's the time when people came to know that Singaraja is there and it is so important. But there is the legally declared Singaraja at that time in 1988, and before that as a forest reserve since the turn of the 20th century. And the Singaraja in the minds of people, which is the area, the larger land mass. So people's attitude towards the Singaraja is not confined to the legally defined boundaries, but what they see and perceive and know as Singaraja. So that's a larger extent.
And Doctor, the press is full of it at the moment. We have Minister of Irrigation. There were reports that they were going to have a couple of reservoirs within the Singaraja. Today we have a clarification saying from the ministry saying that this is it's a proposal and that it is on the fringes of the Singaraja. Whatever the facts may be, bad news to have a reservoir inside the Singaraja or even on the side of the outskirts?
Yes, of course, because what we are left with in the wet zone as forest should be preserved. There is nothing more to be sacrificed, because if you look at the map, and the distribution of endemic species of animals and plants, you can see that it's overwhelmingly in the wet zone. But if you look at the places which are protected in the wet zone, you will see the other side of it. Most of these areas are not protected, and some of these species fortunately still survive in suburban and urban areas too. So Singharaja and the surrounding areas have a unique system of lowland rainforest habitats, and they have a lot of niches with endemics and point endemics, and my hunch is that there may be so many yet to be discovered species lurking in those areas. Yes, now for the past...
That's exciting.
Yeah. Now I can give you an example.
Yes.
In 1993, two scientists, that is Dr. Prithviraj Fernando, now who is known very much for elephant work, and Professor Nihal Dayavansa, who is attached to the University of Colombo, came across a new species of toad, and that was known as Bufo kotagami, in honor of their teacher, Professor Kotagama. So that led to many people looking at the amphibian fauna of this country, and then they came up with so many new species, and the number of species had more than doubled during this time. So that's one indication of the number of species that could be found in these unexplored habitats and waiting to be discovered and named as new species. So if we try to meddle with the remaining forest patches, we may inadvertently force one or more species to extinction, even without our knowing that there was such a species in existence. So in every instance where we make a species of animal or plant to go extinct, we are interfering with the web of life. So the more that we break down the web of life, we are putting ourselves into vulnerable situations.
And Dr. Jagath, do you find it absolutely incredible, or how do you find it when you see the level of interest and commitment and fascination with the environment amongst the youth of our country?
That's a new phenomenon which I had found out within the past decade. I should say, when I was a young boy of their age, very few people were interested in the environment, and they were the tough, outgoing type of people who wanted to go and explore and understand these things. And we had very little facilities, so we had to endure a lot of hardships. But thereafter, in the next generation or the next couple of decades, I saw a waning of the interest on environment by youth. Of course, there was a certain segment, but suddenly it's a very refreshing thing to note is that there is a very big interest and enthusiasm about the youth, from the youth, to protect the environment, to know about it, to care about it, to feel about it, what we call bioempathy. So it's growing in the younger generation, which is a very refreshing thing, and that is a hope for the future, as I see it.
If you were in charge, what would you have done about the mural, about that thing that they erected and then it was taken down again? What would you have done?
If I was a politician, I would have visited them, commended them for their public consciousness, and stayed with them and spoken to them and gone back.
You would have let them express their frustration?
Of course, it's not only the frustration, it's their way of showing solidarity with the whole world, because it was a climate action day which was celebrated worldwide by protests. So Sri Lanka is not a country which is responsible for climate change, and we are a victim of climate change which is happening because of the developed countries emitting a lot of gases into the environment. So we could have told, or we could have imparted the message to the developed countries that our youth are protesting about your actions. So we lost the golden opportunity. Instead, we try to muscle these young people and created an unwanted situation. If I was in power, I should have videoed them and showed their protest worldwide through our media to say that our youth are waking up to your myopic actions.
So a missed opportunity
Yes.
To use it to our advantage. On that note, let's go for a short break and find out what the headlines holds for this evening's primetime news from News First.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Dr. Jagath Gunawardena, a lifetime as a lawyer supporting environmental issues. Thank you for your messages. Here's one, and I will take this on. Please don't call it a protest. It was an action to create awareness. No one protested. This gentleman was there. He knows it was not a protest. True? Not a protest? Was it something to create awareness?
I should say you can look at it from different perspectives. So everyone is free to form their own opinions. The organizations that participated thought that it was to impart a message, so it was awareness creation. But on the same vein, I should say, from a perspective of what is happening globally, we can always say that it was a protest too. So it depends on how you look at it.
But Dr. Jagath, where does one draw the line between development and environmental protection and so on?
We don't have to draw a line, because development as it is defined by us means economic growth or economically profitable things which have a socially responsible dimension, and it should be something that the environment can bear or tolerate.
No.
So environment element is there embedded within the term development. But if it is not development, it is growth, then it's a linear thing where they come into social responsibility and environmental protection too.
Now we have a situation like we just mentioned in passing before about the possibility, a suggestion of having a couple of reservoirs in or around Singaraja to take the water down to certain areas in Hambantota. Now then, at the same point, if we look at the Oya project, and which is nearly complete now, the water is being diverted. It's a three-pronged project for drinking water, agricultural water and power. The water will be going towards Munaragala, and there are so many thousands of hectares of land just waiting for water. So isn't that the sort of play off there? One area you just can't do it because of the environmental destruction, that the potential environmental destruction of our rainforest, UNESCO rating and all that. And the other side, where thousands of people in one of the poorest areas of our country waiting for water because they've got all the land.
It's not that simple. If I can just make another observation, there is a pace of rapid industrialization that is going to happen in the Hambantota district, and that needs a lot of water, and this development should be, it's probably done by Chinese companies who want to locate their factories around the harbor.
Right.
So this whole lot of water may be diverted to meet their needs. So we have a tendency to show the people who are suffering as the people who are going to be the beneficiaries.
Right.
Now take for instance, before Umawe there was the Kirindiwe project.
Yeah.
So that was not even a success, and we still send a lot of fresh water that is unused to the sea through the Malala Canal. So if we are really interested in providing water to the people, why can't we have a reservoir somewhere between Badagiriya and Malala and store it and pump it back to needy people?
And there's no need to have it inside the Singaraja.
No. It's for other purposes, for industrial purposes, but they point out that this is for the benefit of the poor people. Now if that is the argument, then we have to ask the question, what have the politicians who had been elected successively from this particular district had done for the poor people for the past 70 odd years? Ever since Sri Lanka became independent, they should have solved this problem from those times upwards to this point.
So that's you've cracked the problem there straight away. It is with all this industrialization going around there, they'll need water.
Yes.
But there are other ways of sort of skinning the cat, so to speak. You can have a reservoir somewhere else. Have you ever been offered to come and assist the government in their planning?
Not in planning, but I had been asked by various government departments and ministries to offer my services as a lawyer, which I very gladly do.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Because what my attitude towards the successive regimes is, we will support what they do as a good thing, but we will oppose anything that is bad.
And are they always appreciative of your points of view?
I don't really know. I'm not worried about what they think about me. What I should do, I do as a service and a duty, that's all. If I bother about what their perception is, that's another dimension which I'm not worried about. I am satisfied with what I can do, and I do what I have to do to my maximum, and then I don't think about it anymore.
Your presence during this awareness campaign, protests, whatever, did it feel good for you to be there?
Well, this is what happened. I usually don't go for these public things. I always think that my effort is more geared towards the legal method of tackling things, and also about lobbying issues with my knowledge and the knowledge of the teams that we represent. But what happened on that particular day is that I was told that the mural was removed, but at that time I was in another meeting. I came to know about it rather later, and then one of the organizations called me and said that police is obstructing them. So I thought I should show my solidarity, and I should offer my support both as a lawyer and as an activist to them in their hour of need. So I went there and stayed there until the whole thing ended after 6 o'clock or so. So for nearly 3 hours I was there. I was there before they started it, when the activists were there, and at that time the mural had been removed from the premises, and I waited and stayed with them till the event was over. That's how I operate. I offer my support, and if I offer my support, it will not be half-hearted, it will be full support. If not, I will refrain from joining anything.
It's the whole hog or nothing. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
I love the commitment. Deforestation ruined mineral-rich countries like Ethiopia and Sudan. Message from one of our viewers. Agreed?
Yes, of course.
Will Sri Lanka go that way?
We don't have that much of mineral resources.
Right.
But our mineral resources had also been badly used, because we have exported them as raw materials, not as value-added products. So we had to look at the resources in a different manner and try to develop the resource and send a value-added product rather than sending the raw material, and sometimes ironically getting back the finished products once again, paying a huge amount of money for the finished product, which should not be the case. We have to prepare our own finished product.
Dr. Jagath, how do you change the trajectory in terms of the environment? How do we change what's happening?
We have to think deeply and think in a futuristic manner, to look at or rather foresee the future and see the present, and see how we can go to the foreseeable future in the manner that we design or envision. So we have to have a vision of the future, and then we have to go to that goal from where we are present. So without a plan, without a code of action, without a systematic approach to these problems, we won't be going there. We will be just running around like a headless chicken. That's why I see.
And our youth, the final question, our youth, when should we start teaching the children of our country, our future? When should we start teaching them?
when they are as young as possible, because I started to learn about these things when I was in grade 1, I remember very clearly. So the younger the better. So there is no age, but if you try to teach them from their Montessori age upwards, that should be the best.
Dr. Jagath Gunawardena, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. We really appreciate your presence, especially after you also made a presence last night on Face the Nation. Thank you very much. And that's the way it was on Newsline Live this evening. It's now time for the primetime news from News First. In the meantime, take care, have a great evening ahead of you, and as always, God bless you.